The movie starts, and we see 5 girls in the bathroom of a dorm. One of the girls, Alice, holds a candle in her hand and speaks to her friends while looking at them through the mirror in front of them. She tells them the story of Edelvine, the ghost of the girl who committed suicide in that bathroom. She says that the girl cut her wrists, and her heart stopped exactly at 3:13. Alice asks one of the girls, Yvonne, what time it is, and Yvonne says it's 3:12. One of the girls, Carrie, says she doesn't believe any of this, and nothing's going to happen. Alice says they'll find out soon, and the time comes. They start calling the ghost of Edelvine, but Carrie doesn't repeat it with them. Alice asks her if she forgot the words, and Carrie says they already said it, and if it was real, they would have seen her in the mirror by now. Then they hear a sound, and Alice asks who's there. She goes and pulls the curtain. They see a bathtub filled with blood. Alice turns to them and says it's funny, but a girl comes out of the tub and pulls Alice's arm. The girls scream, and Carrie runs to her room. They turn on the lights, and Alice, Bethany, and Lenora start laughing at Rosalind and Yvonne, saying that it's a prank. Alice says it was Bethany's idea. They argue for a little and ask where Carrie is. We see Carrie in her room. She hears a sound and opens her door to look at the hallway. She doesn't see anything and goes back to her room. Her closet door opens slowly, and we see someone with a mask. The girls hear Carrie's scream. Alice says Carrie probably figured it out, and now she's trying to scare them. They get out of the bathroom to go to their rooms, and Bethany knocks on Carrie's door asking if she's okay. Alice opens the door, gets inside, and notices the open window. She looks out and sees Carrie's body lying on the ground with blood around her. We see a girl, Camille Meadows, sitting at the back of the car and coming to Edelvine Academy. They get inside the gates and she sees a guy, Trevor, working with a wheelbarrow, and they make eye contact. Then we see her talking with Mrs. Landry, the headmistress. Mrs. Landry talks to her about the school and tells her how lucky she is that a space opened up for her. Camille asks what happened, and Mrs. Landry says the girl before her had a tragic accident. She slipped and fell. She then tells Camille that Helena will show her around, and Camille leaves the room. We see her and Helena walking. She takes Camille to her room while telling her the dinner and the bedtime. They get to Carrie's old room, and Camille gets inside. She turns to Helena and asks if this was her room, and Helena says yes, there weren't any empty rooms. She tells Camille to come and find her in the study lounge later, and leaves. Camille sees the light flicker and tries to turn it on and off, then she sees that it's broken. We see her at the study lounge, and she sits at a table. Yvonne and Lenora come in and tell her to leave. Camille resists and says she'll sit there. Yvonne says that that's their table, and Helena comes and asks Camille to sit at another table with her. Camille refuses to leave again, and Alice comes in with the others. She asks what's wrong, and Yvonne says that she doesn't want to get off the table. Alice says it's fine, since they have an extra chair at the table now. Then she turns to Camille and says she took Carrie's room, and now she can take her chair. Alice asks Camille her name and turns to introduce the girls. She hits her hand purposely on Camille's drink while turning, and laughs, saying she needs to get changed now. Then she tells her to get out of there. Camille gets up and slaps Alice. The girls hold Helena and Camille, while Alice beats Camille. She starts punching her eye, and Mrs. Landry comes in. She calls them to her office and leaves. Mrs. Landry asks Camille questions about the fight, but she doesn't answer any of them. She tells her that if she doesn't learn who's responsible for the fight, they all will get punished for it. Camille still doesn't say anything, and Mrs. Landry tells her to get out. Then we see her in her bed, lying down, and the light in her room flickers. She opens her eyes and starts looking at the lamp. It flickers again, and she sees Carrie's ghost in the corner. Camille sits up, but she doesn't see her there when the lights flicker again. Camille gets her phone, opens her flashlight, and looks under the bed, but she sees nothing but a pair of boots. She gets up and sees someone sitting under the covers in the bed. She wakes up from this dream and hears her door knocking. She goes to open it, and Trevor says he's there for a maintenance request. Camille asks for a minute and closes the door in his face. She changes her clothes and opens the door back up. Trevor gets in, and Camille says the light keeps flickering. He checks it, but it works fine. Camille says it was broken last night, and says she's new there. Trevor tells her that Mrs. Landry is his mother, and he's been there since he was 5. He says that he does all the maintenance works in there, and the light flickers. Trevor says it must be the ghost, and mentions to her about the Edelvine ghost. Camille gets her bag and says she needs to leave for class. Trevor asks if everything's okay, and Camille says the window might be a little loose, she felt a breeze last night. Trevor says he'll look at it, but he meant about her eye, and Camille says it's just an accident. We see them in class, and the teacher talks about the No Theater, where women were not allowed to perform on the stage, so the men would wear masks to pretend to be one. We see the masks in the pictures are the same mask that the person in Carrie's closet wore. Camille looks outside of the window and sees Trevor working. The teacher calls her name and asks her a question. Then she tells her to focus on the lecture. Then she tells them about the results of the essays they send to Ivy League schools for scholarship. She says that Bethany won it, and her essay will be featured in the next issue of their Gazette. Then we see Mrs. Landry and the girls in the library. She tells them their punishment, and tells them that it will end quickly if they work as a team, and leaves. The girls starts to argue, but Alice stops them and says that Mrs. Landry is right. They need to work as a team. Camille and Helena go to the storage room to find the books that they need. Helena goes upstairs to drop some books, and we see someone behind Camille. She turns around and looks, but it disappears. A book falls down from one of the shelves, and Camille goes to pick it up. She gets the book, gets up and sees someone with a mask behind the shelf. She gets scared, steps back, and someone holds her shoulder. She falls to the ground, and Yvonne and Lenora come out, laughing. Helena comes down and tells them that they are going to mess with the wrong person one day. They laugh at her too and go away. Camille and Helena talk about the girls and Carrie when Alice comes and interrupts them. She tells them to come up, she has something to show them. They follow her, and they gather around one of the tables with the girls. They say that they are going to do a seance. Bethany found it on the internet. Camille asks where Lenora is, and Yvonne says she wasn't feeling well, so she left. Camille whispers to Helena that there's someone in the corner, and they are trying to scare them. They all sit on the table while Yvonne turns off all the lights and lights a candle. They show the girls the writing tool they made from a phone case and a lipstick. Alice says they all need to touch it for it to work, and they do. She starts saying the words, and nothing happens at first, but then it starts to move. They ask questions, and it writes that she's Carrie, and the ghost is real, she's in the room with them right now and she's going to hurt them. The writing tool flies away and extinguishes the candle. The girls try to run away in the dark. Camille lights a lighter and sees the man with the mask. Mrs. Landry comes in, turns on the lights, looks at them and leaves. We see them sitting in the study lounge, and Alice asks what happened. She says it was supposed to be a joke. They were going to draw a pentagram, and Lenora was going to come out and scare them, but that wasn't them. Alice says she really did read the words, and she did it on the night when Carrie fell. Camille asks she means, and Helena tells her it's the ghost of Edelvine. She then says it's not real, and no one's stupid enough to try it anyway, but the girls look at each other. Bethany says it was really just supposed to be a joke, but that was the last time they saw her alive. Then we see Camille and Helena coming out of the building while talking and walking to their dorms. Then the girls come out, and Lenora says she will catch up with them in a bit, and leaves. She walks towards the trees in the backyard while texting someone. She stops and takes a picture. Then she notices someone standing behind her with a mask. She turns around to look and asks if anyone's there. She turns back, and the masked man stabs her. Lenora takes a picture and falls to the ground while blood comes out of her mouth while she sees Camille walking with Helena, and the man starts dragging her away. Then we see Camille studying in her room, and her music suddenly stops. The light flickers, and she hears someone walking behind her. She reaches her hand out to touch whatever's there, but her music starts playing again. Helena knocks on the door and brings her some notes for the classes. She asks her what Carrie was like. Helena asks if she thinks she has a ghost, and says Carrie was a good person, then leaves. We see them in Mrs. Landry's class. Camille looks like she's struggling to keep up with them, and the phone rings. Mrs. Landry goes to pick it up. She says that she's not there. Then she hangs up the phone and tells them that's all for today. She tells the girls to come and see her after they change, and asks to talk to Camille for a second. She says that it's written on her paper that she went to ballet. And Camille says yes, she couldn't sleep well last night, and she has cramps. She tells her that she hopes to see her progress soon, and leaves. Then we see them at her office. Mrs. Landry asks them questions about Lenora, and the girls say they didn't see her since last night. Mrs. Landry says that the staff went to her room to check on her, but they saw that she took her belongings and left. She tells them to let her know if they learn anything, and they get out. They talk to each other, and Camille says Trevor might have a set of keys to Lenora's room. She texts him while Alice asks how she got his number, and she says Trevor doesn't talk to students, ever. Camille says she's going to meet him at the dorm, and they can come if they want to. We see them waiting for Trevor in front of the door, and he opens it. They get inside, look around, and Yvonne finds it odd that her bed's tidy. She lifts up the cover, and they see a cross drawn with blood. We see Mrs. Landry coming out of the room, and she tells them the police will arrive soon. She says that she thinks this is one of their jokes, and she tells them to not tell anyone about this. We see them at the library, looking for something. Bethany finds a record of the girl that took her life there before, and she calls the others. She starts reading a news about a girl named Alicia Kane. Helena brings out a folder from the year 1998. They gather around her and start looking through it. They find Alicia, and they see the same cross that was in Lenora's bed on Alicia's necklace. Then we see Rosalind going to the bathroom to take a shower. She gets in and opens the water. The lights go out when she is washing her body. She yells that she's still there, but no one answers, so she gets out to turn the lights back on. She returns to the shower and sees her shampoo on the ground, but we see the man with the mask behind her. Rosalind turns behind her, but doesn't see anyone. Then he comes up behind her and stabs her. We see Camille drawing the cross on her paper. She puts the pen down and turns her head to somewhere else. She turns her head back, but doesn't see the pen there. She sees it on the ground and picks it up, but her hand goes red. She goes to the bathroom to wash her hands and finds Rosalind's body in there. We see the girls outside with the police and Mrs. Landry. She tells them that Rosalind slipped and hit her head. She tells them to return back to their rooms. Camille goes to her room, and Helena knocks on the door. She says she's there to ask if she's okay. They talk, and Camille invites her in. We see them lying in the bed, smoking while listening to music and talking. Camille gives Helena a weapon to protect herself, and hit whatever's scaring her with the weapon. Then they fall asleep, and we see Bethany talking to her mom on the phone. She tells her she's tired, and she needs to hang up. She takes off her glasses, shuts off the light, and goes to bed. She hears a sound and gets her glasses. She sees the man with the mask, and Camille wakes up to her scream. They run to Bethany's room with Helena and see her hugging Yvonne. She says the ghost was there and she threw a lamp at it. They get inside, and Camille tells Helena to check the closet while she looks under the bed. Mrs. Landry comes in and asks what's happening. Bethany tells it all to her, and she tells Bethany to think logically it was all probably a bad dream. She tells them to go back to their rooms and leaves. They get out to the hallway to talk, and Camille asks Yvonne where Alice is. She says she's probably sleeping, and she will tell her what happened in the morning. They split up and go to their rooms. Camille wakes up to Helena's messages, and they go to the study lounge to meet with the other girls. Alice says they will try to contact Rosalind's spirit. They sit down and hold the writing tool. The spirit answers and says Camille was the one that attacked her. Camille laughs and says this is a lie. She looks under the table to see if there's anything there, and Alice punches her when she comes up. She falls, and Helena helps her. Alice tells her to get away from them. They argue, and Camille leaves with Helena. Yvonne goes to practice for ballet, and she sees the masked man while dancing. She stops, gets her earphones out, and asks who's there. She looks around, and it runs up to her and slits her throat. We see Camille lying in bed, and she reaches to take a glass of water. Someone holds her hand, and she gets scared. She looks down and hides under her cover. She turns to the side and sees Carrie. She tells her that she isn't supposed to be there, and wakes up. She knocks Helena's door and asks to stay there for tonight. Helena agrees and they lay down in the bed. We see Alice getting a text from someone telling her to get outside. She gets up, and Camille hears her leaving. She gets a knife and goes after her. She stops to look from the corner of the hallway. The masked man comes up behind her, hits her head and starts dragging her away. Alice gets outside and sees a telephone light where Lenora got attacked. She goes there and sees Lenora's body tied up to the tree. The masked man comes up behind her and hits her head. Camille wakes up in the storage room with Alice passed out next to her. The masked man comes up to them and brings out a nail from his pocket. He puts it on Camille's knee, and a girl with the same mask tells him that she'll scream. He takes off the mask, and we see that it's Trevor. He says no one can hear her in here, and puts the mask back on. The girl takes off the mask, and we see that it's Bethany. She says they don't need to wear the mask anymore, but Trevor says he likes it. Camille asks if they were behind what happened to Carrie, and Bethany says that they did it to everyone. Bethany starts talking, and Camille tries to cut the ropes on her hand with the knife she brought with her. Bethany tells her that she used Carrie's essay, and she had to murder her for it. She says that she then realized that she needed to remove the others as well, because they would understand that it was Carrie's essay if they saw it. She tells her how she moved the writing tool, and says Trevor helped her even before they met. Trevor starts telling Camille that Alicia was his babysitter. He says that he snuck into her room and hit her with a hammer when she got scared. He says then he carried her to the bathroom and cut her wrists. Helena wakes up and sees Carrie's ghost in her room, looking out of the window. She gets up and looks out. She sees the storage room's lights flickering. Bethany continues to talk, takes Alice's hand, and scratches Camille's cheek to get her DNA under Alice's nails so the police would blame Camille for everything. Then she takes the knife from Camille and gives it to Trevor, telling him to stab Alice with it. Camille starts laughing, and Trevor asks what's funny. She asks if they looked her up, and Bethany says she's not the real Camille. Camille says she's there to pay off the debt. Bethany laughs and asks how that's going, and the lights go off. She tells Trevor to stay there and goes to look for the switch. Camille tells Trevor that this is his last chance, but Trevor says no. He puts the knife to her throat and starts cutting it. Then Helena comes and hits his head with the weapon that Camille gave her. She tells her to hit him again and untie her. The lights come back on and they untie Alice. They carry her to the door and Bethany comes their way. She sees Trevor on the ground and calls him useless. She hits Helena with the hammer and she falls to the ground with Alice. Bethany and Camille start fighting. They hit each other and Camille climbs one of the bookshelves. She makes the lamp fall on Bethany's head and she passes out. Camille starts walking towards her, but a piece of rubble from the ceiling falls on her head and she passes out too. Bethany wakes up, sees Camille on the ground, and crawls to get her knife. She gets up, turns around, but Camille stabs her in the neck with a broken piece of fluorescent lamp. Camille says she shouldn't have hurt her friend Carrie and cuts her throat. Then she walks up to Alice and Helena and sees Alice awake. She asks what happened, and Camille says Bethany and Trevor were the culprits. They talk, and Camille goes to check on Helena. She wakes up, and Camille tells them to return to the door and call the police. They go, and she returns back. She doesn't see Trevor on the ground and hides. We see him walking with his mask on and the hammer in his hand. He starts talking to Camille. He pushes the bookshelf she was behind and gets on top of it. Camille stabs him in the leg and he falls, gets his foot caught in one of the shelves, and breaks his leg. He starts screaming, and Camille comes out from under the bookshelf. He starts talking to her, and she asks him how many friends he had while growing up. Then she pushes the cabinet next to his head towards him and decapitates him. She goes to her room and gets her things. She finds Carrie's pictures and takes them with her. She changes her clothes and walks out, but Helena catches her and says she knew that she was going to leave like this. Camille turns around and tells her everything. She says that she's not the real Camille Meadow and says she needs to go. Helena asks how she can reach her when she needs to. Camille turns back, kisses her, and says that she will find her. She stops, turns around and sees Carrie's ghost. She waves at it, and Helena waves back, thinking Camille's waving at her. She turns back and walks away. While Helena turns to return to the dorms, the movie ends there.